Hello, good morning, and welcome to this class introducing some of the local edible and medicinal wild plants that grow around us. And today we are going to focus on two plants which are prolific, whether you are in the countryside or a town or a city. You might not have realised that they're there particularly, but they will be, and they'll be there in large numbers, and also have a very strong traditions around them in Ireland. Which I think are very interesting to look at. But the reason I've chosen them today, we're going to look at two trees. The whitethorn, as it's known in Ireland, but it's the hawthorn is the more common name for it, and the blackthorn. And I've chosen them because people muddle them up frequently, and they're both good sources of wild food, and the hawthorn in particular is a great source of herbal medicine and has got really interesting story about its history of medicinal use that's very personal to where I live in. I live in County Clare in the west of Ireland. So yeah, I'd really like to focus on these two plants today and help you first of all with identifying them and then come on to their uses. So thank you to everybody who's attending live. We've got loads of people on live again, and again, huge amounts of people who have registered who are going to watch the recording later. So hi to you guys. So just if you have questions or comments, please type them into the chat bar. Your questions are very welcome. This is just to interest you, and there's a wide range of topics connected to just these two trees. And it's lovely because it's lovely to do the classes this way actually, where we focus just on two plants, because every time I finish one of these classes, there's still more I haven't told you, we haven't got to talk about with the plant, or bits that I've had to kind of skip over because of the time. And it just shows you how much, even if you just learn half a dozen local plants, how much there is in that. It's not a competition. You don't need to get out there and learn every single thing about every single plant and learn to identify every single one. There are still loads of them I don't know, or I'm not confident at identifying. I mean, I know a lot of them, but there's still more that I don't know, because the habitats that they thrive in, it's quite different where I live. I've got very alkaline soil, so I don't really get the trees that grow so much in the acid soil, and so I quite like leaving bits that I don't know on purpose, because it keeps me interested when somebody else shares what grows where they are, and particularly the recipes for using them, because they're just not things that I would get to use on a regular basis just because of where I live at the moment. So I'm going to start with, we've got, sorry, I managed to get something in my eye, so I will be going to try not to do that too much, but I think I got dust into my eye as I moved something just before we started, so I'm not crying. I know it quite often ends with me crying, but I don't usually start crying. Without any further ado, I'm going to bring this one forward. Who knows which one this is? Now, this is live broadcast software, so how well you'll be able to see these things depends on how good your connection is. In my video course, everything is pre-recorded in HD video, so super sharp videos for identification. But for these little informal classes, I bring nature into you to show you. So I wonder if anybody can tell me which one this is. Hawthorn, yeah, well done, great. Oh, not only are you great at ID, you're super fast at typing. Okay, so this is also known as whitethorn in Ireland. Now, who is on from rural Ireland and is having a heart attack in the background? Because what have I done? What are you not supposed to do according to tradition in Ireland? Who can type this the fastest? I honestly, bring it indoors, yeah. So in Ireland, in rural Ireland, it's considered to be really unlucky to bring hawthorn or whitethorn into the house, and I have rebelled and done it. But you see, I have a deal with the plants because they told me years ago. I think it's much more important that people learn about them, and so I've got a deal with them where I'm allowed to pick bits of them and bring them into the house to show people. I can't do these classes. I know other people can live stream them outside. I can't do that where I live, so that's why one of the reasons I'm bringing it in anyway. Oh, Anna, you're on. Anna, I'm so sorry. I just don't speak Spanish, so I'm so sorry. If you want to send me your questions in Spanish afterwards by email, I will pop them into Google Translate and do my best. Anyway, yeah, never cut a hawthorn tree, so I have snipped off some little bits of it to show you, and never bring it into the house. So I've done two things I'm not supposed to do. But these traditions are, I hadn't heard of that with the hawthorn until I moved to rural Ireland, and it's a very specific, strong belief from folklore here. Whereas in other parts of the world, it's not regarded that way, that it's bad luck to bring it into the house. I'm sure there's parts of the world where it's actually regarded as good luck, actually. So I remember when I was first told that, probably by a neighbour who was freaking out that I did this. But I remember thinking, but what about my hawthorn? Because I bring it in and I dry the tops and the flowers to make tea, and I make cordial and ice cream and things from them. And I'm like, but what about my hawthorn ice cream then? Is that unlucky? I mean, how do you make that in the garden? You can't, you know. So anyway, I'll come on. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. So here's the other one. This is seeing as we've only got two plants today, it's pretty obvious what that is. So that's the blackthorn. So I'm going to show you how to tell the difference between the two of them, because that's the first thing. So the first thing I find is that people muddle them up, and the reason being, they've both got white flowers. So in Ireland, where the hawthorn is more commonly referred to as the white thorn, people see a tree or a hedging with white flowers and assume then that that is the white thorn. And it's not actually the one that you see. So they're both trees, and they're both quite often, especially the hawthorn, cut into hedging, but they are beautiful trees if they're left to grow. There is one near me that dates, it's a few miles away, but it's been dated back to 2000 BC, so they can be very old. And it's in a lovely round grove of hawthorn trees, which is just it's a beautiful experience to go and sit in something like that. It's really special, especially when they're flowering. So yeah, Neve's saying our hawthorns aren't in flower yet. Yeah, I've got one hawthorn. It's all hawthorn hedging in the first field out behind my house. And there's one tree that's in that hawthorn hedging that flowers, it's just, and goes into leaf about 3 weeks ahead of the rest of it. And the same in the autumn when it produces the haws. If you don't know what these are, don't worry, I'm going to come on and explain about the different parts of the trees and how they're used. But it actually flowers, or it's always three weeks growth ahead of the whole of the rest of the hedge, and it's in the same line of sun and everything. So I don't know why it's like that, but it is. Anyway, so the first thing is the ID. So the hawthorn's it's only my early one that's just produced two little florets, one of which I've cut and brought in to show you today, because if I don't do this lesson for you today, basically, then the opportunity will have gone, because this is the blackthorn. So if you have a look at it, what do you notice about this? What do you notice about this this branch and this plant? No leaves. Yeah, brilliant. Well done, Neve. Well done, Suzanne. Yeah, well done, Emily. That's it. So this branch is producing flowers, these lovely, delicate little white flowers, before the leaves come out. And that is the blackthorn. That's what it does. So it is the easiest way to identify it. It's also got huge thorns on it, which I've got another bit to show you with the thorns. But the hawthorn has flowers as well. But the blackthorn flowers before the leaves come out. So that's very unusual. And it looks, hello Connor, how are you? Or are you translating the Spanish? Aren't you? Super, thanks. Okay, so you're hired. Thank you very much for doing live translation and sparing me dealing with another email. So it's really pretty. You'll usually, I was quite lucky to still find a branch actually that just had the flowers on it, because this does flower earlier than hawthorn. It usually flowers in April, so we're on the last couple of days really of April now. So I had to look, spend a bit of time looking to find a branch for you that just had the flowers and not the leaves. But it's lovely. It's something really special to see this tree covered in these beautiful little white flowers and no foliage. It's really lovely to look at, no leaves. So that's something to look for in early April. This is it then. This is the blackthorn when its leaves are out. So we'll have a wee look at that there. It'll be easier for you to see. And then I've got a branch. Where did I put it? Here, I've got one branch with a little bit down here where it's actually still flowering and the leaves have popped out. Okay, so that is how we tell the blackthorn. Well, that's point number one about how we tell the blackthorn from the hawthorn, is if it's flowering first, it's the blackthorn. And the blackthorn and whitethorn are not related. It's a really good example of why we use Latin names when we're learning about plants properly, because when we use the Latin name, we always know that we're speaking about the correct plant. There isn't any confusion. But with common names can overlap, and so they can cause a great deal of confusion. So people muddle up blackthorn and whitethorn because the names sound so similar. And both trees have got great big thorns on them, but they're not related. The blackthorn is actually in the plum family, and the flowers actually can be used sort of food foragers, especially people who make alcoholic drinks, tend to use the flowers to flavour liqueurs and things, because that family of plants has that sort of slightly bitter almondy flavour. So it's a few of the flowers in drinks is becoming quite a common thing with foragers who are making liqueurs. But usually with blackthorn, the things that it's used for and valued for are the fruits, which usually appear in it depends obviously which part of the world you live in, but they usually appear here where I am in late August, and September the whole place is covered in them. So they produce the sloes. So the blackthorn is the local wild plant that gives us sloes, which are used to make sloe gin. Has anybody made sloe gin? Yeah, lovely. Yeah, lovely. So yeah, sloe gin. Yeah, absolutely. I think sloe gin is it's one of those things that's in the sort of first three things that you ever make, I think, if you're foraging, because sloes are so plentiful. There isn't any issue getting enough of them, which I'll come on to as well, because I have a big theory about sloes. and why they're so useful. But they are absolutely plentiful, abundant crops, and they're there for a long time. So they are. Has anybody made the mistake of eating a sloe straight from the tree? Have any of you done that? Yeah, they look like, somebody's asking what they look like. So sloes look like, I'll send round a photo of the sloes when I because obviously I don't have those just now because they come out in the autumn, but I'll send round a photo of the sloes with the video, the email with the video recording for you. Yeah, nice culinary experience, a raw sloe. Emily is just saying yucky. Yeah, Neve's saying not great. Yeah, yeah. So they're very astringent, for all they look juicy and enticing. So they're like damsons. Damsons are bigger sloes basically, so they're like small purple plums, but the sloes are round instead of that larger, more elongated shape. Anna's saying you ate them as children. Very good. So did you treat them before you ate them? Because they're very astringent, and astringent things dry up surfaces. So the most common example I can give you of astringents that we might use is actually a cosmetic thing. It's a toner. So when people apply a toner to the skin, it's to tighten the tissue and close the pores. And there are a lot of foods actually, well, particularly wild foods and herbal medicines that behave that way, that are astringent, and they're very useful for lots of different medicinal purposes. But sloes they just absolutely make you pucker up, and they dry up your mouth. So I did take a foraging walk a few years ago. I don't know what drove me to do it, but I did eat a raw sloe, and then of course my mouth dried up, and I have to do a lot of talking. It might surprise you to hear that, but I have to do a lot of talking when I'm taking walks. And so my mouth was so dry I couldn't manage. So luckily somebody had a boiled sweet, so I had one of those, and that had the opposite effect then. So so that was handy. You ate them off the tree, but not often. Yeah, so what you can do to make sloes more palatable when they're raw is actually to bash them. And I've seen, it's still traditional here. I've been out and I've seen local people, and they get the sloes and they'll just put them on the stone walls. It's covered in stone walls here, and get a stone and just bash them on the stone. And what that does is it mixes the juices inside the sloes, and it frees up the chemicals in them. And when they interact, when they mix with each other, it becomes less astringent. And so we do a similar thing when we harvest sloes to make gin, because you're supposed to harvest them after the first frost, because the first frost tenderizes them, which is what we're doing if we bash them with a stone, or chew them really well if you can do that, but so the modern version you can do, because the weather is changing, you know, if your fruit crop looks like it's going to disappear before we actually get our first frost, then the modern thing you can do is harvest the fruits and put them in the freezer overnight, and that is the equivalent of you know, them being exposed to cold weather naturally, and that's tenderized them, and then you can use them to make gin. Same as kale, sweeter after the frost. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to come back up to one more identification feature, because I think it might be Vicky and Anne-Marie pointed them out, and I wanted to point that out to you too, is how different the shapes of the leaves are with the blackthorn, which I'll show you again when I show the hawthorn. But if you look at the leaves with the, if you look at the leaves with the blackthorn, you'll see they're an oval shape. So they're a very different shape to the hawthorn leaves. So I'll come back and I'll show you them together when we get on to talking about the hawthorn. The flowers actually, this is looking at it in a lot of detail. The flowers are a different shape as well. They're about the same size as hawthorn flowers. They do get bigger, but they grow in a different shape. So they are small white flowers, but they're very different to hawthorn small white flowers, including, which is something that there's no way I'll be able to get across to you in this live video, but if you look at the petals, closely, then they come to a little point with the blackthorns, whereas with the hawthorn flowers, they're little round circles. I always think of hawthorn flowers as nature's confetti. I'm convinced that's where the idea for throwing confetti came from. Anyways, I never made gin any recipes. Yeah, okay, so sloe gin isn't actually gin. It's a liqueur made with gin rather than you actually making gin from the fruit. You can make gin from sloes, but that isn't what people are doing. That again will require distillation equipment, and it could be illegal as well, actually. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's classed with poaching. Anyway, what people mean when they talk about making sloe gin is this thing, which is actually a liqueur. So you get the sloes and you fill up a jar. So get your trusty jam jar and just fill it. You'll probably want to make a lot more. If you're making sloe gin, the sloes are absolutely abundant, so get a big 1 litre Kilner jar because you'll fill it with no problem at all, you know, and there isn't an issue with over harvesting sloes. Well, certainly not where I live. It depends where you live, of course, but it is something that's prolific, so it shouldn't be an issue for you to make a lot of it. And so fill it up with the sloes and you pour on gin and you pour on sugar. I forget actually if it's equal amounts of sugar to gin or if it's half the amount of sugar. It's probably equal amounts, it usually is with these sort of things. But again, I'll double check that when I send round the email, because I've forgotten. It's a few years since I've made sloe gin actually. But so you make it in September or October and you stir it, and very slowly then the sugar dissolves over the few months, and really it's ready to use at Christmas. It's a lovely thing to serve on Christmas Day, but it's even better if you leave it for much longer. If you leave it for a year, it's gorgeous, and it goes this beautiful sort of, when it's young, you know, so if you open it that first Christmas, it's a sort of reddish colour, but the older it gets, then the deeper sort of bluey, purpley colour you get from it, and it's really lovely. I remember making loads of it 10 years ago, maybe longer, and bringing it to serve on Christmas Day, and nobody would try it. So I was vexed about that, and then I gave it to somebody at Christmas, and they wouldn't try it on Christmas Day, but I got a message from them out of the blue the following August saying, "Oh, that's sloe gin, I've just tried it, it's delicious, blah 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 blah." And I thought, "Jeepers!" And then so then the next year everybody wanted sloe gin. Anyway. So it's more like ferment. Well, it's a liqueur because so it's very strong, you know, because you're taking gin and you're making it stronger, because the huge amount of sugar that you put into it then increases the alcohol levels. And if you look at plums and damsons and sloes when they grow in the wild, you'll see they've got a little sort of coating on them. They look dusty or dirty and you sort of want to polish them, but that little layer of haze on them, for want of a better word, that's the layer of natural yeasts, probiotics. You know, we spend a lot of money buying supplements of good bacteria to put into our gut, but if we've got organically grown fruit, then it occurs naturally on the surface of the fruits. Anyway, yeast occurs naturally and is in the air. That's how you can make sourdough bread without adding yeast. You know, it's tapping into the yeasts that are in the air rather than adding dried yeast or these chunks of fresh yeast that bakers use. So on the surface of the wild fruit, elders like this as well. That's one of the reasons it's made into alcoholic drinks so much, is that there's a lot of wild yeast on it. But it's very apparent on the sloes where they've got this kind of cloudy surface rather than polished and clear, and that's the natural yeasts and bacteria and things on the surface. So they're active then when you put them into the gin. Yeah, Vicky's just said the same with elderflowers. Yeah, absolutely, with most things, that particularly fruits, but yeah, elderflowers are very, very yeasty. Yeah. Well, it's the same. So Helen's saying, is it the same with organic fruits? Well, it is when you pick them from the tree, yeah. But apples, apples have got natural yeasts and probiotics on them if you pick them and have them from the tree. It's the journey from where it's growing to your mouth. That's the thing that will, how long that is and where it is and where it's been treated and things will be different depending on that. So if you're buying organic food from the supermarket, then they won't be there because they'll have washed it to make it look appealing to the eye, and this kind of cloudy. Have you ever bought plums? And plums are clean when you get them from the supermarket. They don't usually have that dusty, cloudy layer on them. Grapes as well. I mean, grapes are like that. That's why they're made into wine, but it's the more you can shorten the distance between your food source and you, the more benefits you're going to get, and the more gaps there are, and the more processes they go through before they get to you, the more things need to be supplemented, basically. For me, there's all sorts of tricks for making prebiotics and probiotics. Absolutely, fermenting's a great example of that. Yeah. Okie doke. So that's slow gin. Is that okay for you? So the other thing I wanted to, a friend of mine, oh jeepers, this is a good one. A friend of mine added some yeast to his elderflower champagne when making it. So elderflowers are yeasty anyway, but he added in brewer's yeast, presumably, or wine yeast. Mistake, all 17 bottles exploded in the garage when fermenting. Yeah, I think he shouldn't have put the cap on, actually. Yeah. I've got to start making veg ferments. Yeah, anyway, right, okay, we're getting a bit off topic now. Yeah, no, oops. I mean, that happens if anybody's done brewing. You do need to leave it in the demijohn until the thing is to leave it until it stopped being active, until you stop seeing the bubbles, and then bottle it. And what I was taught to do was actually add in, I think it was half a teaspoon of sugar to each bottle, because that would just be enough fermentation going on in the bottle when it was sealed. So whereas if you did it the other way, you run the risk of all these explosions because too much pressure builds up in the bottle. Yeah, it's years. I mean, I haven't done brewing really for, it's nearly 20 years. I did do it a long time ago. Exploding ginger beer. Yeah, exactly. Are there any medicinal uses for the sloes? No, they're not. So there aren't medicinal uses for the sloes. There are two reasons, really. I just want to come on to the difference in the names, and then I want to go on to the significance of the sloes. So as I was saying, both the hawthorn and the blackthorn have white flowers, which is why people confuse them and think that both of them are whitethorn in Ireland. But the two names actually refer to, it's not the flowers, it's the colour of the wood. So you're probably not going to be able to see this too much, but hawthorn or whitethorn has got a pale wood sort of greyish colour. You won't see it on the new growth because the bits that are new that are growing are dark brown, but if you look at the trunk of the tree and the older branches, it's a pale grey colour. And if you look at the blackthorn, then the wood is really dark. So that's where the blackthorn comes from. It's the colour of the wood, it's dark, and on the hawthorn, the wood is pale. So that's what blackthorn and whitethorn refer to, the country names. I was going to say something else about that there. This is gone. Oh yeah, so the sloes then, obviously the flowers of the blackthorn, so it's Prunus. The Latin name for the blackthorn tree is Prunus spinosa, and I'll send it round when I send the email. Don't worry, because it's hard to remember, to recognise and remember Latin. It's obviously, you're not going to fill yourself, you're not going to get a substantial meal from a mouthful of blackthorn flowers, and then the sloes are this really astringent, sour taste. So it's not something you're going to be making desserts from. But what we see from old Irish sources is that actually the Blackthorn was really significant, and lots of places in Ireland are named after it, because the Irish Gaelic name for sloes is Arne, Airne. Yep, Arne. And so what we find is we have a lot of places named after the sloe. So Killarney is a really good example of that. So Kill being church and Arne being sloe, so that is Church of the Sloes. And if you look at the old sources, remember, people were totally reliant on knowing and using local plants as part of, significant part of their diet. They couldn't run off to the supermarket if the crop failed. So that did make me wonder when I learnt that, why they were why they were the sloes were so significant to them, that they were naming places after them, because it's such a foul tasting fruit. It's not one that you would get into your diet easily. What I've noticed from observing them, I've lived in the same place for 14 years, 15 years, something like that now. And what I've noticed from observing the sloes during this time is I've seen them in lots of different weather conditions. And usually with fruits, as anybody who tries to grow tomatoes will know, or even strawberries, we need good hot summers. We need sunshine and heat to ripen fruit. And what I've noticed about the sloes is that it doesn't make a jot of difference to them whether we have a dreadful summer where we had lots of summers where it wasn't just that they weren't hot, it was that they were dark and grey, so there wasn't the light either. And very wet, and the sloes just thrived in those the same way that they did well when there was a sunny, dry summer. The only year I've seen a poor crop of sloes was when we had a very windy May. There was very windy weather around about this time, actually, the end of April, beginning of May, and it blew the blossom off the branches. And remember, flowers, if we don't pick them and use them, turn into fruits. So basically the early stage of the fruit blew away. So come the autumn that year, there were hardly any sloes, but for the simple reason the flowers had been blown off the branches in very windy weather, and so they didn't remain on the plant to turn into fruit. So yeah, really significant food source for our ancestors. Yeah, yeah, they're abundant and they do well in bad weather. Yeah. Oh, we're getting great Irish in now. Yeah, yeah. So I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that. Sorry, Neve. Because I don't want to offend people by getting that wrong. Yeah. Yeah, Arne, I did spell that right. Yeah, thanks. So Afada-I-R-N-E. Yep. So there's great information about that in just looking to see if I haven't tidied up and still have it lingering near my desk. No. There's great information about from the historical side as well as the brewing side in Wild and Free by Cyril and Kit O'Careen, which is the Irish classic book on foraging. They originally published it in 1978, which I rib Kit about mercilessly because that was the year I was born. And she republished it a few years ago, and there's lovely information in that about from the old historical Irish sources, because Cyril was a Gaelic scholar, so he was great at translating those sources, and that was where I learned about the Arne and it being so significant. So it's a lovely thing to go and look at. Yeah. So I'm getting a few questions in about the flowers. Can you make tea from them? I haven't, it's not a medicinal plant, so I haven't come across doing that. And just where things taste kind of almondy, they've got a chemical in them that they've usually got amygdalin in them, which is in almonds as well. But I'd be a bit cautious about taking that certainly regularly in a tea, just in case you took too much of that, because small amounts of that bitter flavour are fine and are safe, but I wouldn't go for a medicinal tea with it, because I think you'd be building up too much amygdalin if you took that regularly. Yeah, just a few flowers. It tends to be added into drinks to flavour them. It tends to be the sloes that are that it's used for, rather than the flowers. Although they are really, really pretty. It is very astringent again, so yeah, I wouldn't be too keen on using the flowers that way, if that's okay. I'm just going to check I didn't miss any other questions. No, I think I got them. Okie doke. So, coming on to the hawthorn then, because there's absolutely loads to say about the hawthorn. Oh, I just wanted, sorry, well, I'm going to be comparing them here. So this is a branch of the blackthorn, the slow plant again. So you can see the huge thorns on it, can't you? They're really, I was going to a wedding one May, I think it was, or June, and I'd been out harvesting different things, and you get a really terrible scratch from the branch of the blackthorn, so much so that people used to think there was poison in it, and they take ages to heal up. So I had to wear these long gloves this wedding, just because I was completely scarred. I had these huge scars from them. Anyway, so do be careful. Do be careful if you go out harvesting the sloes, because the thorns are super sharp, and you might not notice them when you're getting the fruits. They are quite easy to sort of beat. One of the techniques is to beat the tree with a stick or a hurley. If you're over here, use a hurley, and catch them in a basket. That's one of the ways you can do them. My friend's convinced he got infected from a hawthorn scratch. Well, I mean, any scratch can get infected if you don't clean it, and you know, opportunistic bacteria gets in it. Absolutely, of course, any scratch from anything can get infected, but the scratches from the blackthorn are notoriously bad. So anyway, coming on to the hawthorn, which again has got big thorns on it. So you'll see there, oops, big thorns on the hawthorn. So do watch out for that too, because the leaves are much bigger and grow in clumps on the hawthorn, and you'll probably be less aware that it's got thorns until because of all the foliage on it, because they're less obvious to see compared to the bare branches of the blackthorn, or the Spartan branches of the blackthorn. What about blackthorn sticks? Yeah, the other significance, thanks Tanya, the other significance of blackthorn was the way it was used for its wood. So it's easy actually, although it's very hard, it's easy to bend to shape into a walking stick, to shape into the handles. And a neighbour of mine actually used it to make the handles for her kitchen. I would get really, her handles for her kitchen presses. So the handles for the doors on the cupboards in the kitchen, and they're lovely, and they're such a dark wood. It's really beautiful. So you can see here, this is the hawthorn. Do you see the wood is very pale looking, isn't it? The wood of the hawthorn makes a brilliant fuel, but it burns super duper hot. So, well, when I say it makes a good fuel, be wary of using it as fuel, because it burns much hotter than other woods, and was actually used to make charcoal because it burnt so hot. I do know somebody who was given a load of hawthorn wood for their stove in their mobile home, and the mobile home nearly caught fire because the hawthorn burnt so much hotter than other woods. So do be careful with it. It was favoured because it burnt to such high temperatures. So the wood is this paler colour, and then the leaves, as you can see, I can't think of any plant that's got leaves that shape. They really are very distinctive. and the flowers grow, it's almost like a hand shape with the hawthorn leaves. They certainly don't look anything like the blackthorn ones. You know, you can see they're completely different. They're so much bigger. And then you get these lovely little clusters of flowers. So these are just opening with these perfectly circular little petals. They're really beautiful. I love the smell of the hawthorn flowers. Some people don't like it. Really attracts a lot of insects, the hawthorn flowers. They're just loads of insects like them. So to come on to uses of this then, hawthorn as a plant, we can use the leaves and the flowers, and then in the autumn it produces haws, which are a sort of bus red, reddy orange colour, and again a prolific fruit like the sloes. It fruits for months, and again it doesn't matter how bad the weather is, we always get good crops of haws. I've never seen a bad crop of haws actually ever, and they fruit for months as well. It's not like elderberries, which are brilliant as foods and as herbal medicines. They're fantastic, but you've got 3 weeks to go out and get them, and they're only there for a few weeks, and you've got to race the birds to them as well because they go for them. The haws are there for a long time, so again a really, really significant food source for our ancestors. So as a wild food then, you can start with the leaves. They're actually already getting a bit old. Really the beginning of April was the time to go and get them when they were nice and tender, but the leaves finely chopped and mixed through a salad are really nice. And the flowers, you can make lovely teas. You know, teas, you would just pinch off the whole thing there, the leaves and the little florets there, and pop it into the teapot to make hawthorn tea. So using the leaves and the flowers. And they also make beautiful cordials. So the flowers on their own, we were told as kids that haws are poisonous. Yeah, a lot of people were told that as kids, and it's much better to tell people that things are poisonous if you don't know, if you're not able to recognise the difference between medicinal and edible plants, than to go the other way and mistake them, because that would be a fatal error. But no, haws are not poisonous at all. They're really safe. They're a really good wild food. And they make quite a dense, they're a really useful wild food because they're available for so long. And when you get a haw, it looks quite big and succulent, but actually it's quite a square shaped fruit. When you cut into it, most of what's in there is a square shaped stone. So there's a very thin layer of flesh, but it's dense. So you don't need a lot of haws, especially given how easy it is to harvest a lot of them. You don't need a lot of them to create a structure and something that's quite filling. So I use them to make chutney. It's really good to use to make ketchup as well, which is basically a runnier chutney. And when you make the chutney, you know, you only make small jars of it, but it's very dense, and so you don't need big portions of it when you eat it. So they're really, really useful as a food. I don't know that you can take them raw at all. I've never come across using haws raw as a food, but that might just be something I've not done with them. I've certainly always cooked them. But if you're using them as a herbal medicine, then you're using them in a strong tea called a decoction. So all you're doing is popping them in water and boiling them, just simmering them for 5 or 10 minutes. And if you're making a tincture, then you're doing it the same way you make the other ones, which is steeping it in alcohol. So yeah, a lot of people have been horrified out on foraging walks when I've started talking about haws and using them as foods, because they were taught that they were poisonous. But it's absolutely the right thing to do. If you don't know the difference between wild plants and which flowers and fruits are poisonous, and you teach that they're poisonous, because you don't want to, you know, mistakes can be fatal or very damaging. So that's absolutely the right way to go with that. It's much better than saying, oh, everything's safe because it's natural. It drives me mad. Do haws have berries? sorry, do hawberries have stones that can break teeth? Well, yeah, if you don't de-stone them, absolutely. They've got these huge square squat stones in them. If you're doing my video course, if you go into the autumn course, then the videos about haws are there, and I'll show you getting the stones and de-stoning them to make the chutney. So you'll see how big they are. Squirrels manage to eat them without breaking their teeth. I had a red squirrel in my garden years ago, and it was the haws it was gorging on. It loved them, but yeah, it was just nibbling, much smaller teeth than us, so it was just nibbling that thin layer of the fruit of the flesh around the stone and throwing away the stone. I also made hot tincture and oxymel. Yeah, right. So I'll try to do this in order. We'll start with the leaves and the flowers, and we'll work through to the fruits. I made hawberry gin last year. Oh, really? Not as nice as sloe gin, but I had a small shot glass, good for the heart. Yeah, I make the hot tincture, and which is just, I'll talk about what tinctures are. But I actually put that into, sorry, it's April, I'm going to say the word Christmas, but I put it into the mincemeat from a mince pies, so it gives it a real kick. It's really lovely, and of course it's this gorgeous haw tincture is this beautiful red colour. Anyway, okay, loads of questions and comments coming in, so I'm going to go through this in order so that we don't be getting confused, and I'll come back through and work through your questions then if I've not gone through them automatically as I do this. So you can make a really lovely cordial from the flowers, and I think that, so just a culinary cordial, you know, it's not strong enough to be used as a herbal medicine, but it's absolutely beautiful, and I think it's a really special thing to make, because what's really special about the flowers is that they're available so fleetingly. You've really usually only got about 10 days in the year where you can go and harvest the hawthorn flowers in their optimum condition, and because they wilt very quickly, and some people say they don't like the smell of the haw flowers, and I mean, they do have a distinctive smell. They're slightly sweet at this stage where they're newly opened, but they bloom very quickly, a bit like apple blossom. Apple blossom doesn't last long either, and they begin to wilt very quickly. So really, from about after 10 days of opening, they're starting to wilt, and the smell changes then, and they start to smell old. So you want to get them before they get to that stage where they're fresh and they're vital and they're lovely. So between the combination of them not actually blooming very long and having to get them during a dry spell of weather, if you live in Spain, that's probably fine, but in the west of Ireland where it's very wet, you know, there are some years where I'm just not able to make that, because the combination of them being open at the right time and wet weather means that there's no point in harvesting them, because if the plants are saturated in water, whatever I make from them is going to go off. It's not going to, because the chemicals in the plant aren't as concentrated as usual, because the plant is saturated with water. So that's diluting extracts that we make, and it's changing the ratio of water that's in the plant, which means that they're much more likely to ferment. They're diluted, they're not as aromatic, they're not as strong and concentrated, but they're much more likely to ferment and go off. You know, bacteria will grow in them much more rapidly because there's so much more water in them. So it's a really special thing to make if you get the chance. And for some reason, the process that I've got for making the hawthorn flower syrup is much more complicated than flower syrups made from other things. I don't know why. It's this traditional recipe that I follow, and I haven't ever used it the other way. And so basically, the process of making this hawthorn flower cordial takes a whole day, really, between going out and gathering them and making this nice slow extract of the flowers. It's gorgeous. So it's this really special thing that you've made at the end of it when it's ready. You know, you never ditch it because you've made buckets of it and it's gone off. It's something that it's become a real ritual, I suppose, for want of a better word, where I try to make it every year. Some years I've noticed it's usually a lovely cream colour, but some years I've noticed it's quite pinky, even though I'm making it from hawthorn flowers that are white. You do get varieties of hawthorn where they're pink. In fact, the name whitethorn confused me so much when I first moved to Ireland, because I'd trained in the UK, and the hawthorn there, the wild hawthorn, has got beautiful pink flowers. So I've seen that variety of, well, it's the same tree. It's not a different variety of the tree. It just produces pink flowers instead of white ones. And I've seen that growing sometimes on the east coast of Ireland, but it wasn't anything like as prolific as in the UK. And over where I am in the west, I've never seen a wild white hawthorn the same way that we get them in the UK. So it's the white one that's much more dominant here. But anyway, the cordial of these flowers went this lovely, gentle pink colour. Might have been last year, 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. I remember them being a really wonderful crop. The hawthorn trees were just prolific that year. You know, there were just so many flowers on them. Yeah, so coming on to it medicinally then, is that okay? You okay with that? But the cordial then would be, the cordial is a lovely thing just to dilute with sparkling water and ice, or it's also really nice poured onto ice cream. So you can, if you make your own ice cream, you can mix a hawthorn cordial or syrup through that, or you can just simply buy ice cream and pour the cordial on top. That's the easier option, so I'm always for the easier options. So much new vocabulary. Is that tincture and oxymel? I know. And here was me, I always try to keep my stuff jargon free as well. But yeah, it's like learning anything else that's got its own terminology, hasn't it? Yeah, okay, there's lots of lovely things coming in here actually. How long would the dried flowers last in a jar? Okay, so we're getting more onto medicinal extracts here, so I'll come on to talking about it that way as well. I think it's Lorna, I can't see your name, I'm sorry, because the bars I'm only getting the first 3 letters of people's names now for some reason. Single hawthorns tend to be known as fairy trees, so be very careful when harvesting. Yeah, we were talking about that at the beginning with the hawthorn grove and things, and also known as heartsease as well, is another name for them, which is really interesting because I do find with the hawthorn, it's used medicinally as a herb to help the heart, and qualified herbalists in their clinic would be using it to help people with quite serious heart conditions. But even on a more energetic level, you find, or certainly I found, there's this really strong connection with the heart, right down to come back to this thing where I'm convinced they're nature's confetti, because of the shape of these lovely flowers and the time of year that they flower. And it is also known as the wedding tree. That's another traditional name for it as well. I was in a wee local documentary that was made by local artists here in County Clare about the hawthorn trees. So it's a 20-minute film, and it's about its significance in terms of folklore and medicine and food and biodiversity. So I'll send that round for you with the email as well, because it's really interesting. It's called Rebirthing the Hawthorn, and it was last year or 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago we did that. I can't remember. Yeah, it was 2 years ago. Anyway, I'll send that round to you, because there are local people that they interviewed, and they share a lot of their experience about the traditions. Yeah, it's really interesting. That's fine if you need to go. It's absolutely grand. I'll set the video will go around in an email. Don't worry, it's not school. You can go to the toilet. You don't need to put your hand up and ask. You can leave if you want to. It's fine. Anyway, So I'm getting a lot of questions about the medicines. So to use it as a medicine, so it works on the heart. And so first things first, safety. If anybody has got serious heart problems, a medical condition with their heart, and especially if they're on heart medication, please don't go off and self-medicate with this. Please don't go and start taking Hawthorn, because what, school was never this interesting. Very good. Anyway, it was, yes, they did chemistry lessons this way. It would be so much more, and history and all sorts of things, wouldn't it? Anyway, and botany for that matter, because it can be blooming boring. Anyway, so where was a Hawthorn drying them? Oh, I've lost it now. Yeah, so medicinally, yes, no, that was it, medicinally. So don't start giving Hawthorn extracts to somebody who's on heart medication, because all of that stuff is very finely balanced. And if you start taking a natural herb that regulates, that might, you know, help to regulate different things in the heart, then that's going to affect, thank you, that's going to affect their medication, and how quickly or slowly their body gets through it, and how much of it they need. So stay away from, when we do these free introductory classes, we're only talking about general stuff. It's only to open your eyes, and we're talking about fit, healthy people who don't have serious medical conditions and aren't on medication, okay? You've got to be really careful with heart medicines. Don't you worry about that. Go to somebody like me. It's my job to worry about things like that. That's my job, to work along things like that, and, you know, read blood tests or send people for blood tests, or all of these things. So and take blood pressure and stuff. So don't you be worrying about things like that. We are talking about fit, healthy people. But it's very interesting because Hawthorn is used in herbal medicine clinics, so professionally, for a range of heart conditions. And for example, we would use it if somebody has high blood pressure or low blood pressure, and that can seem to not make any sense and be very contradictory. If you're coming from a purely pharmaceutical point of view, where you would use one medication to, if you had high blood pressure, or few medications, if you had high blood pressure, to artificially lower the blood pressure in the body. And very different medication then if somebody had very low blood pressure and you wanted to push their blood pressure up. You wouldn't be using the same drug for that. Whereas with herbs, it's much easier to understand them. As I've said so many times before in these free classes, you know, herbs are much closer to, and sometimes in many cases literally are, food. You know, they're much closer to food than they are to pharmaceutical drugs. They contain a range of chemicals in them, not just one. So when we use a pharmaceutical, it's usually one chemical that's given in isolation, and that's why it works immediately. You know, if your blood pressure is plummeting because you've had a car crash and you've lost a limb, and it's plummeting, you want something to bring your blood pressure back up immediately, you know, so to keep you alive. There are absolutely times and places for these things, and they're brilliant. But that's one of the reasons that we have loads of side effects from drugs, is because they're one chemical given in isolation. So I know I've mentioned it before with different things that can damage the gut. There are loads of examples, as we all know, of side effects from drugs. Whereas with herbs, side effects are they're very rare, and they're much milder than they are with pharmaceuticals. So it might be things like people might get a mouth ulcer or a rash, and if that's the case, then you just don't take it and you use something else again, you know. But they're very mild, and they're rare, you know. It's not normal. It's not the normal sequence of events that if you start on a medicinal dose of a herb, you're going to get side effects, whereas that is kind of normal if you start on a course of pharmaceuticals. So to come on to how on earth can Hawthorn, how can we be using Hawthorn to try to help these seemingly opposite conditions, high blood pressure and low blood pressure? And the easiest way for me to explain it is, if you think of the herb as a tonic or as a food for that organ, that particular part of the body, then what it seems to do is give that part of the body what it needs to nourish it back to health, so that it can work properly itself. If you're giving the heart what it needs, and it's not just the heart, it's the whole cardiovascular system. So that's your veins and your arteries and the blood going through them. Then if that system is getting what it needs, then it tends to balance itself out again. You know, it takes time. It's not going to happen in 2 days. It takes time, but it tends to then get what it needs and regulate itself, you know, so it finds its own balance again because it's being fed what it needs to get itself back to normal. So it's really lovely, actually. And we tend to think of herbs as being, they've got sort of thrown into the category of alternative medicine over the last, just under a century, really. But you don't need to go back that far to find where they were being used regularly by doctors. It's a very modern thing for it to have been pushed to the side this way. Herbs, plants have been the basis of medicine forever, really, and it's the old herbal medicine is the oldest and most widely practiced form of medicine in the world. And doctors were writing, they used to call them receipts rather than prescriptions, and they were writing receipts, and people would go to the apotheker, which was like the pharmacy, where the apotheker would make up these medicines that the physician had asked for, and they were made from a wide variety of things, minerals as well, but a lot of it was plant-based, a lot of it was herbal-based, and frequently, though, not local plants, because there wasn't much profit in using local plants. A lot of the time, ironically, it was plants that were being imported from the Middle East. And anyway, that's a whole other subject. I might do a history. Would you like a history of medicine, one of these? I might do one of these because it's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. It is not as logical. The more you learn about medicine, the more you realize it is not as logical and scientific as people think it is. You know, loads of it is political. Loads of it is to do with people making money along the chain, as it was back then. This is what I'm trying to say to you. Don't think because there were apothecaries that they were busy powdering nettles. They were powdering loads of stuff that was imported, because it was a big business, you know, as well. So it's the more you learn about this, the more you realise how little changes. Anyway, it's very interesting. So coming back onto, I see there's other things coming about meadowsweet and bits and pieces. I'll come back and pick up on it, don't worry. But to come back onto the hawthorn, because this is a wonderful example of this. So as I've told you, it's really well known for treating heart conditions. And when I first moved to Ireland in 2003, I set up my clinic in Ennis in County Clare. And I mean, I still do that very, very part-time now, but I do still have regular clients. But when I started my clinic, I did it full-time for years. And excuse me, all the talking. Don't worry, it's not a cup of sloes. I'm not going to dry up. And for some reason, one day I was reading my, I had cause to look up the entry on hawthorn in my herbal medicine encyclopedia that I used a lot. And it was written by a British herbalist who was really experienced. And he died, oh geez, maybe about 15 years ago or something now. But he spent years compiling this encyclopedia. And there was this lovely little footnote about hawthorn, and it said, Dr. D. Green of Ennis, County Clare, obtained this international reputation for treating heart conditions, keeping his remedy a secret. And after his death, his daughter revealed that the medicine he was using was a tincture of the ripe red haws. So that's the haws that come out in September that we've been talking about. And I sat in my clinic in Ennis, County Clare, and I got the shiver that ran down my spine. And it's really interesting because Dr. D. Green did get this reputation for treating heart conditions with Hawthorn, and what's really interesting is he wasn't the only doctor doing that. And I know we talked about the cleavers last week, didn't we? And the doctor in Ireland, Dr. Quinlivan, who'd been using cleavers extract in St Vincent's Hospital to help people with leg ulcers, and how he'd been really impressed with that, and so much so that he'd written an article for the British Medical Journal and sent that in, and how I'd found that article. Well, it's the same with the Haws, and I found correspondence from the British Medical Journal, not just about the Haws, but about Dr. D. Green of Ennis, and and his treatment. And it's very interesting. There was a series of letters. This was from the early 20th century, actually. This correspondence in the BMJ between the doctors about using Hawthorn for the heart, and some of them were saying that it helped some types of heart conditions but not others, and they were writing and sharing their experience. And it's not clear whether Dr. D. Green was a regular physician, or sometimes they'd be called irregular physicians, which generally meant they were using homeopathic medicines. They were homeopathic doctors, as they sometimes referred to them back then. Or I don't think herbalists tended not to be referred to that way, but it's not clear from the records if he was a regular doctor or an irregular one. But what I do know from finding this correspondence in the BMJ is that other doctors knew about his treatment and were using it, and were writing to each other, sharing their experience of it. So again, I'll send you round if I can find it. I knew it's the Cleavers one, but I'll send you around the BMJ links. It's a bit harder it's not one neat article like the last one. It is a series of letters, but it's very interesting, So, and again, with what I experienced from working in this for so long now and teaching, is that it's all coming full circle. There's so much interest in modern medicine, in going back to herbs and looking at them and how they were used. And there's just example after example of it. And, whether it's universities researching them, research departments are alive with researching plants and trying to see what they can get from them, and how if there's useful things we can learn from their traditional uses. Don't think that every traditional use is right either, I mean, we've got all sorts of nonsensical traditions, there's all sorts of examples of that. So it's not a question of everything that's being handed down automatically being correct and accurate, but it's a great place to start from, otherwise you're just absolutely where we start from tradition and historical sources, it gives us a really likely place to start. Otherwise, it's to put it in archaeological terms, it's like trying to, saying you're going to research the Vikings and not listening to traditional stories and folklore and myths, and just putting a pin in the map and starting in Uganda. It doesn't make any sense. So it gives us all sorts of, I'm getting something in about foxgloves. I'm sorry, because of the Gaelic. I don't know Gaelic. I'm so sorry. So I don't understand the significance of the little side conversation that's going on here. But just don't eat foxgloves. Here's your tip of the day. Foxgloves takes 2 leaves to kill an adult. There you go. Off you go and write your whodunit. So you don't need to consume many foxgloves to is it about digitalis? Is that why you're on foxgloves? So foxgloves, yeah, foxgloves are a great, I'm sorry, the comments are coming in so quickly on the side of the screen. I'll need to go back through to catch up with them. But foxgloves are a brilliant example of a herbal medicine that's entered conventional medicine. It is not one that I recommend you go off and DIY. I would stay well away from it. Some people get, because it's so concentrated, the difference between the medicinal dosage of foxglove and the deadly dosage is fractions of a gram, so don't go near it. As I said, it takes 2 leaves of foxglove to kill an adult, but foxgloves give us the vital life-saving, you know, frequently medicine digitalis, which is used for heart failure. For heart failure, so don't go near it because it's illegal anyway to go and harvest foxgloves. It's absolutely controlled in labs, and some people get really oh, that was a herbal medicine, and they get really irate about it. Personally, I'm totally happy for somebody else to have the responsibility of making that medicine. I do not want to go anywhere near that. But that is a great example of, you know, it was a herbalist that, I think it was a professor at Oxford, had heart problems that the physicians weren't able to treat, and so he ended up going to the local herbalist, and she gave him a mixture of herbs that included the foxglove, and it saved his life. And he analysed it afterwards and decided that it was the chemicals in the foxglove that were the active thing, and that was where the drug digitalis came from. So all sorts of stuff like that. We should do a history of medicine one. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm going to read out this folklore bit. I'll read it out loud so I don't look like I've drifted off into a dream. The Shifra is a fairy. Usually a baby can be stolen and a Shifra put in its place. Apparently they powdered the seeds. Oh, that powdered the seeds of foxglove. Is it to get rid of the fairy? It's from, yeah, it's from 1930s copybook stories. Right, okay. Yeah, so if you are particularly worried about angry fairies, don't, you know, foxgloves, you'll actually absorb that. It's very interesting. I wonder how many people died as a result of their fairy powder preventative, because you'll absorb the chemicals of the plant through your fingers. I was teaching a few years ago, and I was teaching about foxglove and comfrey, because sometimes when the plants are very young, people can muddle up the leaves. And I was describing how, because the foxglove is beautiful, but it's so poisonous, and how this is where, oh geez, I'm not going to read that out, that's gruesome. But I meant the people who were powdering it, actually, what happened to them. You'll absorb the chemicals through your skin. I had a florist at a class I did, or a walk or something, a few years ago, and she'd ended up in hospital because she worked in the city and she didn't know about, no, it's okay, it's fine, don't say sorry, it's very interesting. We'll do it in the history of medicine class, okay? Because there'll be loads of gore and things like that in there, don't worry. Can't do history of medicine without some grim stories. It's very interesting, thank you. Anyway, she'd picked foxgloves, not knowing what they were, because she worked in the city and she didn't know wild plants. She just thought they were beautiful plants that would look really good in her arrangements. And she'd ended up in hospital because she'd handled them so much, she didn't know they were poisonous, and it was absorbed through her skin. So do admire foxgloves, have them there for the bees and admire them, but don't be putting them into flower arrangements or trying to make your own digitalis or powdering them to get rid of fairies. There's your top safety tips from today. So the hawthorn, in contrast, is a very safe herb to use. And to come back to some of the questions and comments that have come in while we've been here, if you're going to make tea, you can, as I've said, you can just break off these little bracts of them. You can use them fresh, or you can dry them. Somebody put in a question about drying them. So, I mean, you dry, I think I've covered drying herbs in all of these free classes. You would just dry them the same way that you do anything else. So when we're drying herbs, what we want is for the water to be lost from the plant. So however you dry them, there's lots of different ways that you can dry herbs. Make sure that the herbs aren't overlapping, because if they're overlapping, then they're going to trap moisture, and that will cause mold to grow. So, but they're quite easy just to pinch off. and just leave them drying in these little clusters as long as they're not overlapping, and with the flowers on them as well if you like to. Then that's lovely. You don't need to separate out the leaves and dry them and dry the flowers separately. You can just pinch them off in those little bits and dry them that way, and then you have the medicine for later in the year if you want some. The same if you're going to tincture it, you know, you can tincture the leaves and the flowers together, that's fine. So a tincture, for those of you that don't know, and those of you that have been doing this for a few weeks will now have heard the word a few times. And I'm always told it sounds very funny in the Scottish accent, so when I go tincture, anyway, tincture. You get your herb and you put it in a clean, dry glass jar, and you pour on your alcohol. You use the same jars, yeah, they're good, aren't they? Very easy to remove the jam label, I find, Vicky. Put your herb into the jar, pour on, it's the strongest alcohol that you can get. So where it's a DIY home tincture, it's usually brandy or vodka. They're the strongest solvents. And they're really good solvents, so they extract the things we need from the herb, and they preserve them too, because alcohol is an excellent preservative, and it concentrates it. So then we tend to take much smaller dosages of tinctures than we do of teas or water extracts. So with Hawthorn, it tends to be a lower dose rather than teaspoons. It tends to be drops that we take. So if you were going to make Hawthorn tincture, you can pop the leaves and the flowers into the jar just now, but later in the autumn as well, you can add some haws in too, or you can just simply tincture haws separately. The haw tincture goes a gorgeous deep red colour. It's absolutely beautiful. I love making that. Yeah. Right, there are loads of comments coming in, so I just want to go through them. How do you recognise Hawthorn? Did you just join us, Marie? Because we did a lot of that at the beginning. Does it look similar to Blackthorn? I think maybe if you wait for the recording and go back and watch the video, then you'll see that, because I started with the identification differences between the Hawthorn and the Blackthorn. Is that okay? You'll get an email with the video recording at about 4 o'clock. The Blackthorn is the one that flowers first. That's the biggest tip, the easiest one, but we spent quite a while doing the ID at the beginning. I made meadowsweet tincture, but I don't actually know what to use it for. Yeah, meadowsweet's lovely, and it's used as a natural antacid, so to help to relieve heartburn is a really good thing to use meadowsweet for. It's naturally anti-inflammatory, so long term it's something that's oh, okay. I won't read that out because that's really private. Ah, okay. Oh, right, okay, okay, oh, very good. If you want to email me that after the class is finished, I'm going to continue that conversation with you afterwards privately. Okay, we think we've just discovered the significance of making that, okay? You're welcome. Because I'll just check a couple of things with it for you, okay? Just pop that in an email to me, I'll get to that today. You'll skip the queue because that's urgent. There's a very big replying to email queue at the moment, folks. All I can do is apologise. I'm sorry, there's only one of me. Yeah, okay, so let me just go back up and check I haven't missed anything. I don't think I have actually. Meadowsweet for aspirin, we got that, didn't we? Okay, no, I think I'm doing all right actually. Right, so the Hawthorn is it's really, really lovely. So you can just at this time of year just pick, as I said, the leaves have got a bit old now for salad. They're much nicer when they're younger and succulent, but just start picking them off and putting them into tea. And you don't need to have it on its own either. Do you know what I really like together? I really like Hawthorn and red clover together. They're quite often flowering at the same time, and the red clover has just started to open here just on Sunday. I noticed it for the first time, so it's quite early actually. You can tell we've had a good dose of hot weather. It's about a month earlier than usual. I usually find red clover in late May and right through June then, and it will keep going for a long time. But I do like red clover and hawthorn together, possibly just because they're so pretty. But you can mix and match them, you know. So if you're just doing it as a wild hedgerow tea, then you can pop in, you know, you can be using the nettles. The other things that we've been talking about on these free classes over the last 4 or 5 weeks, you know, you can use the nettles, cleavers, dandelions, daisies, the hawthorn leaves and flowers, you know, they can all go into the pot. Yeah, hawthorn, primroses and clover. Yeah, that would be gorgeous, really nice. So much red clover in Brittany here at the moment. Yeah, because you're further on than us, so yeah, absolutely, you'll have loads of them. But it's just starting to open here, and I'll do one of these free classes about red clover in the next few weeks when it's plentiful. But it's a wonderful, sure, they're all, don't I always go, oh, but this plant is so wonderful, it's one of my favorites, and then I do it the same the next week about the next one. How do you make cordial? It does depend. Cordial, basically you make a syrup, and there are various different techniques for making syrups, and then cordial tends to be the syrup diluted with usually sparkling water if you want to have it as a refreshing drink, or if it's in the winter to heat you up with hot water. So you might make a syrup or a cordial with elderberries or blackberries or rose hips, and then dilute it with hot water to drink it that way. But syrups they're made slightly different ways. They are made slightly different ways for slightly different flowers and berries. There's a variety of different techniques for making them, and basically they require lots of sugar. And the way that people go wrong with syrups, okay, this is a time of year, excuse me, especially when elderflowers will start to open very soon. I know they're already open in the south of England. It's probably covered in it in Brittany as well, and Spain. People go wrong with syrups. I start to get lots of messages from people whose syrups have gone off and gone wrong, and it's down to they haven't used enough sugar. The reason being, we're all anti-sugar these days. We've all been trained that it's really bad for us, and I'm not disputing that at all. And I am nearly 42 and still don't have fillings. Okay, so I don't have a sweet tooth. I very, very rarely use white sugar for anything, but the exception being I use it when I'm making flower syrups, because some flowers have got such a delicate flavour. Even if you use brown sugar, it completely overpowers the flavour of the flowers. And for something like the hawthorn syrup and cordial, where I'm only making a small amount and I'm only using it once a year, I just think it's such a special thing to do. I just have it as a special thing that it is. There's a big difference with sugar between having it to make an extract like this, and the ratio of sugar, it's not just to make it sweet, make it taste sweet, it's actually because sugar is a preservative. So the ratio of sugar to flour and water or liquid is vital to preserve your syrup, and that's why people's syrups go off within, you know, a few days or a few weeks, is because they've measured out sugar, been horrified at the amount of it, and refused to use it. But it will not work. It's essential that you have the correct amount of it to preserve your syrup or your cordial. And remember, when you drink it, then you're diluting it. So it's usually something like a teaspoon or half a teaspoon of sugar diluted in a tall glass of water. Compared to having a sugary breakfast cereal that contains 3 tablespoons of sugar in it and having it every day. You know, there's a huge difference between things you consume on a regular basis, your daily habits, they're the things that are vital, and occasional things that you have as a treat. And I would very much put the flower syrup in the occasional things that you have as a treat. So yeah, so I think you can make syrup with honey. Yeah, you can use it. You can make infused honeys. We do that loads in my classes and courses. Again, some people don't want to use honey either. So I find with both methods, usually in classes, there are people who don't want to use either, you know. But with the sugar substitutes, I would just say to you, I don't, every year I mean to experiment with them and keep the syrups. I want to keep them for a year to see how they hold, and every year I don't get around to it, and I'm sorry. And I'll go back and I'll ask other foragers again. I have asked a few times if anybody else has done it. I'll do that again and see, but I didn't really, everybody seems to keep coming back to sugar for the preservative reason from what I can get, or honey. I mean, honey works really, really well too. This is, for those of you who've been tuning in every week, this is the Primrose infused honey that I'm still making. So I think it's, it must be getting on for 2 weeks now. So I'm going to put some more fresh primroses into it again. But it oh, you can't smell that, but of course you can't smell that. But I'm going to taunt you with it over the internet. I'm going to taunt you with my primrose honey. So that's the fresh flowers that I've just been steeping in the honey and stirring every day. And it smells absolutely glorious. And then I'll just strain off the petals and keep the honey, and do that with, you can do it with honeysuckle, you can do it with elderflowers, you can do it with roses. It's gorgeous. Yeah, you've made dandelion honey. Yeah, I haven't made that recently, but it's yeah, that's a lovely thing to do as well. Violets as well, if you've got violets. I mean, as Mary Poppins says, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Yeah. Sorry, I missed a few things here, I think. I've missed the free classes. Can I get copies? Yeah, yeah. I've put all the recordings onto one web page now. So, so when you get the link to this class, it will be on that same web page, so you can go back through and watch them. Yep. If you've run out of things to watch on Netflix, there's probably about 12 hours of these classes or something. It's probably more than that there now, because I didn't put them all on, because some of the first ones we were doing the same herbs all the time, so I didn't put them all on. How many have we missed? I don't know. I've lost track of how many I've done. It just, you know, as I said, I usually do one in the spring, one in the summer, and one in the autumn. And now, of course, everyone's at home, so there's a lot more people looking for the classes. Okay. So, any other questions? You're so welcome. I still make the thyme honey syrup I learned in your class 10 years ago. I love it. You're very welcome. Jerry says I should be charging for this. Well, I charge for my video course, you know, so a lot of people go in and they do my video course. Yeah, it's not usually this big thing. It's turned into a big thing. But thanks for looking out for me. Okay, so on that note, actually, moving smoothly on, really smoothly, are you practicing as a herbalist? Yeah, I've been practicing as a herbalist since 2003. I qualified in 2003. I'm full though. I stopped taking on people in my clinic in 2018. I'm sorry, I'm just, but yeah, so I can't take on new clients there. I'm sorry, but yeah. Yeah, I've been doing this for ages. Yeah, I've been doing it for so long that when I started, people used to say, "Oh, you're a bit young to be a herbalist. You look far too young," and now nobody says that anymore. So that's how long I've been doing it for. And I can't quite pinpoint when people stopped saying that, but I've noticed I haven't. Nobody's said that for years. It's lovely being home to see the videos when I'd normally be at work. The benefits of lockdown. Yeah, well, there seems to be, because people can't go places, they're noticing the birds, the wildlife, and the things that are on their doorstep, and that's great. You know, there's always there, you know, it's lovely to tune into where you live. And I know on some of these other classes, we've spoken a lot about, we don't have time today, we've spoken a lot about looking in the city and where you live and where you might find things. And the thing about this is that nature is all around you wherever you live, and you don't need to live out in the countryside. I really didn't. I got into foraging when I lived in the city, and it changed my experience of where I lived. It really turned somewhere that was pretty ugly and depressing, and had all sorts of problems. I saw it in the whole with new eyes, and I had a different experience of living there, because I was able to find these things growing. I was able to make the dandelion beer and wine. I got stopped by, I'm sure I told that in one of the classes, I got stopped by the security guards because they saw me on CCTV. What on earth was I doing? And I was picking dandelions. It was regarded as very suspicious behaviour. And but it really changed my experience of living somewhere that was pretty grotty. And because I was so young when I qualified, I didn't have a house and a garden, and this garden I could cultivate. I've always just had to make the best I could with the humble resources that I've got. I didn't come from this other career where I bought my house and had loads of money in the bank from it. I was 24 when I qualified, so I just had to use what was there, and that was really how I got into foraging. I mean, the first few years, I think the first 2 or 3 years, I advertised foraging walks just for food. I've run herbal medicine classes since 2004, but definitely the first 2 years, I advertised wild food things. I couldn't get the numbers to run a class, and I had to cancel them, and I'd only take 12 people, you know, I wasn't looking for 100, but there just wasn't any interest in it. So it shows you how much it's changed. And it doesn't matter where you live. If you're in an apartment, you can still do this. Because I know you can, because I did it. I lived that way, and I did it then. And I planted pips from leftover lemons and things that I'd bought from the shop, and I grew them. And I'm not green fingered. It's only things that don't need much attention and much water that survive with me and indoors. And I went out on my bike and I cycled and I picked things, and I just found stuff growing. And it is all around you. You just need somebody to show you it, you know. You just need someone to show you how, to give you the basic safety tips. It's dangerous if you go out gung-ho and you don't have any sense and you think everything is natural, so nothing can harm you. That is where people come a cropper, especially if they start using plant ID apps and all the rest of it. And that actually was what inspired the Blackthorn whitethorn class today, because somebody doing my course was using a plant ID app, and it misidentified blackthorn as whitethorn, and they're really different looking plants. So foraging apps and plant ID apps are notoriously unreliable. Please don't use them. And you know, please do learn from someone who's experienced, who will help you, because Googling an image is out of context. Like the first thing I told you about these is that they're trees, you know. Whereas if you just look them up, you'll see a fruit out of context or a flower out of context, and people won't even realize that they're trees. Loving this recent surge of interest in nature and herbs. It's wonderful. It is wonderful. I'm loving it too, because people didn't used to be interested, you know. I went through people saying all sorts of throwing all sorts of insults at me over what I did. So yeah, I love it too. You're very, very welcome. Yeah. Do you rinse? Hang on a minute. Do you? Yeah. So plant ID. If you're looking for plant ID, I mean, books on Face Group. You are better to ask in those. The people that run them are brilliant. They are so good. But you need to wait for their answer. The thing with these Facebook groups is that they'll have 30,000 members in them, and quite often the people who shout the most in them are the people that know the least. So you need to pay attention to the group for a little while until you realise who the people are who know what they're talking about, because a lot of people just shout random answers in them. But they are very, very useful for ID when you get the hang of using them safely. I sometimes use them too, you know. I know lots of people who run them. Yeah. All right. Okay. There's something going on about selenium. I don't know what that's about. Must have missed that conversation. Okay. So moving swiftly on. If you are interested in learning more with me, then I've run a video course. This is my 6th year of running my video course, and it's just a few local herbs. I know I've missed some questions. I'll come back to them at the end before when we finish, if that's okay. I'll scroll back through it again. But it's just a video showing you how to safely identify a few local herbs that are easy to recognize and that you can use, you know, safely and liberally as wild foods and herbal medicines. So I'm just going to bring that up so that, because I promised I'll do a wee tour of my video course, and I've made it as well. I do it at this, well, I mean, people can join at any time, but most people join it in the spring and the autumn because of the times when the plants are out. But I've made it half price just now because so many people I realise have lost their work or are facing all sorts of financial worries just now, but yet need something constructive and positive to do. So I've heard from more than one doctor at the moment doing this course that this is really helping to keep them going because it's just so inspiring, you know. So I'm just going to bring that up and screen share, and as usual, the flipping thing has disappeared. Hang on a minute, and I'll just show you how to use it because it's very easy to use. And the thing about video is that you can go back and you can watch it over and over again until you are confident that you recognise the plant and that you know how to make the extract. So I've filmed the plants. You're very welcome. I'm getting really nice messages from people who need to go in for lunch and stuff or go to the loo. That's fine. So I'll just pull this up and whoops, daisy. This is my website. For those of you that haven't been on it. Do you know the other thing I don't do from these free classes? I don't steal your email addresses and put you on my mailing list and start emailing you. So if you want, I've got a newsletter that's got loads of free tips and recipes and things in it. If you want that, you'll need to sign up for it because I don't, I'll send that round in the email as well. I don't pinch it. There we are, great, okay. So I've lost your questions again, hang on. Silly me, I pressed the wrong button. Do you know what's wrong? I'm getting hungry, so I've pressed the wrong button. Where is that? Can you see the screen? Could somebody please type into the chat bar and let me know that you can see the screen? Oh, it's gone. I'll need to go back again. Yes, you can. Okay, thanks. I'll do that again. Drinking the fresh herbal tea, which is what I've been drinking, makes me really hungry. Really hungry. Okay, right, I've got you now. Okay, I've got your questions. Okay, thanks. So I'm going to pop you down here. So this is the homepage of my website. If you go over, if you're on a mobile phone, load the menus because it's really hard to navigate it without the menus because it's got a lot of content. You know, phones are for scrolling, they're not for going through things with content. So load the menus. This video course is in the members area, so just on the top right hand side you click the members button, and if you do enroll in the course, then all you need is an email address. Sorry, I've got bits of Hawthorn on my keyboard, so just had to tip that out of the keys there. So you just log in with your email address and password. That's all you need. You don't need Instagram or Facebook or Zoom or anything. Don't worry, I'll send round the web link and the course link and things with the email recording as well. But if you Google me, if you Google Vivian Campbell even, you'll get my website, or you'll get the guitarist from Def Leppard. So you'll need to choose, you'll need to work out which one's which. All right, okay. So when you go into it then, this comes to the members area. There's a little video there just telling you about how to use the course, but I've typed the same thing here. This course has got, this will be the 6th year I'm adding new things to it. So there are at least 150 videos in it. Now, all of them, apart from the webinar recordings, because they are sessions like this where people ask questions and so that I can help them, all the rest of them are 10 minutes or less. I've kept them all really short so they're easy to look up and refer back to. So you don't need to work through an hour of a lesson to find the 2 minutes of information that you needed to hear again because you couldn't remember it. But I support this course. I support it with these live Q&A webinars. We usually do them once a month, so that when people are working through the content in the course, if they go off and they make something and it didn't turn out right, or they weren't quite sure about things, then they get the chance to ask me, because I know that the difference between being able to do something, having the confidence to do it, or not, and just never doing something even though you really wanted to learn it, is being able to ask a teacher your question and get the reassurance of an answer and an explanation. So even if you know, you can have great books, and for me, an online course isn't to replace a book. It's the point of it is videos and hundreds of photos to help you with identification and the practical things that you can't get across in a book the same way, because you can't publish visual things that way. But even with a book, they can be really, really well written, but for the lack of being able to ask the person what they meant, sometimes it's, particularly when it comes to practical things, that stops you doing it. And I know that because that was it for me for years as well. You know, it took me, somebody asked me, I think earlier, about courses. I can't remember if that was on here or somewhere else this morning, but it took me 2 years to even find a course in herbal medicine. You know, it took me 2 years to find one because it was before the days of everything being online. You know, people having websites. It was the late 90s. I was looking to find a herbal medicine course, and I didn't go and start until 2000 because it took so long to find one. Anyway, so we do the webinars, and we've also got a private Facebook group, which is really interesting just now because people are sharing lots of different recipes. I'm learning loads from them as well. And then down here, then we've got the courses. So they're divided into seasons. You're very welcome. I get nice messages coming in here. Thanks for joining in. So they're divided into seasons, so you can dip in and out and see what might be growing around you at this time of year. So we'll go into the spring and early summer course because that's where we are just now. And up at the top, the very first time you go in to use the course, you can dip in and out of the rest of it whenever it suits you and do it in whatever order you like. There's no start date or stop date, you know. What you do need to do is go through these information and guidelines the first time, because of it's really important that you get the safety instructions for foraging and the medical instructions, and you know, they're all very quick. They're short videos and not much text to read, and the poisonous plants, okay, because that's the, you know, that's stuff to keep you safe. So just the basic guidelines. So the similar equivalent of electricity, you know, it's the stuff that it makes it safe for you to use a light switch, and we all know that we don't get a fork, run it under the tap and jam it into the socket and switch it on, okay? So it's the herbal medicine and wild food equivalent of that, just to keep you safe. What's the difference between what's the difference between a monthly fee and a one-off fee? That's for buying the course. So you can either buy it once and keep access to it forever. So that is half price just now. So that's €122.50, which is a bargain actually. Anyway, and the monthly fee then was just for people if they were on a budget and they wanted to just use it and finish it, then they could just pay every month for access to it. So usually monthly access is €20 a month. But again, it's half price just now, so you can get the course for as little as €10 a month at the moment. So if people are, you know, are really strapped but would have the time to do this just now, then you know, you might only use it for a few months. So then people can get through it that way as well. But if you buy the full course, then you're keeping access to everything. That's the difference. Okay, so here are the plant lessons. Let's get into the interesting stuff. Okay, so here's plantain. We didn't talk about plantain today. Maybe I should have done hawthorn. Never mind, I've clicked plantain now. You're welcome. So at the top, the name of the plant, so always the common names and the Latin names, and it will tell you what's contained in the lesson. So every plant lesson has got a video showing you how to identify the plants and close-up photos. It's also, they've all got a herbal data sheet, and for all I called them that, they're jargon-free information about how to recognise the plants and how to use them. And then they've got either videos or step-by-step photo lessons of making extracts from them. So they might be herbal medicines or they might be wild foods. So the top section is identification. Sorry, I'm going to get back to the other questions. I can see more coming in. So if you click on the video tab, that will bring up the video, and you can either watch it on the screen or, sorry, I'll just mute it. There's some nice local harp music on there. If there's any time in harp music for you. So you can either watch it on the small screen or you can make it full size. The thing about the video is that it gives you context for the plant. You see the environment that it grows in as well as the scale of it. So even when you've got an identification book, or I mean, I've got over 100 books on herbs, you know, I've got loads of them. And sometimes I look at the photos and I think, oh, well, I know what that plant looks like, but it doesn't look like that photo. Whereas videos are just, the best way to learn this is in your community when you're growing up. You know, your mother's apron strings are from your granny or from someone in the village who'll take you out and show you. But I think, you know, then the next best thing to do is to do an apprenticeship and live that way. But I mean, for the modern life, where few of us can, I couldn't do that. I couldn't learn that way. I think videos are great because you can go back and watch them over and over again until you build up the confidence at recognizing things. So I'm only 5'2" as well, so that gives you some sort of context for the scale of the plant. And then, hang on, we'll just pause that. So that's the videos. There are close-ups of the photos as well, so you've got key identification points of the plant there too. And then we'll come down, here's the herbal data sheet. So you can read it on screen. I put it in colour on screen to make it easier on the eye, but you can also print it. So you just click that link to download the PDF, and that's in black and white then, so you don't bankrupt yourself in coloured printer ink. But it's, the names are in, they're always in Latin and English. Where possible, I've also got them in Irish Gaelic. Even though, as we've established on this webinar today, I can't read that or pronounce it, but I did make an effort. German, French, Spanish, and Italian. So what kind of plant is it? Is it a little weed in the grass? Is it a tree? You know, really basic stuff. Which bits do you use? Is it edible? What time of year should you be looking for it? How safe is it? Can you drink buckets of it, or is it something to take small amounts of so that you don't come to any harm? Are there any particular issues with medication? What are the benefits? You know, why would I bother? What's the point in me bothering? And then using it as a food. I've included whether or not it's safe for juicing, because just because something is edible, it doesn't mean that it's juiceable. I don't have any more time to dwell on that today, but I have spoken about that in more detail on some of the other recordings. So I've got some basic recipes here. Then I come on to medicinal uses. So the first section is home use, DIY, internal uses. So these are things you might use. So with plantain, you might use it to try and prevent hay fever if you get hay fever, or for mild coughs. And then externally, it makes great treatments for cuts and scrapes and grazes and bee stings and all sorts of other things. But then I've got more serious medical conditions that qualified herbalists might use it for. So we might be using it for people with serious asthma, cystitis is another one. And I've always got dosages for adults of the tea and of the tincture, and the same for children. I don't really have much about history there because I think it's much nicer to read that in a book, and there are plenty of them. And I always recommend a book that's got a nice chapter or section on that particular herb. And then down here, sorry, I know somebody asked something about books. I'll come back through that for you when I finish the questions off at the end. And then the recipe and extracts for plantain, there are loads of them. So there's making a bandage, a first aid bandage here. So again, you just click the video and you'll see it's kind of set up like a cookery demo. So hang on a minute. There's a wide shot for you, so it's easy to see and follow. they're not DIY selfie videos, you know, those things drive me mad. Well, especially the outdoor ones, because all you can hear is whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Well, some of them are better than others, but they're hard to follow, I think. I worked with a professional filmmaker, because I think it's crucial for the ID stuff that you get the really important points across, and that is hard on a phone selfie video. They're very useful for other things. So infused oils and ointments, that's there as well. And then down at the bottom, then again, you can read the recipes on screen, or you can print them off and read them from paper. And again, they're in black and white. So all the plant lessons are like that. So the Hawthorn's there. I don't actually have Blackthorn in the course, but I'll try and add it in this autumn. I tend to add more bits and pieces every year, so I'll try and add the sloes in this autumn, because that would be nice. I just used that today because I wanted to show the difference between the identification, but the Hawthorn one is there. We've got elderflower, red clover, silverweed, sorrel, cleavers, primrose, daisy, dandelion, there's loads there. And then herbal extracts, so this is just at a glance, so that you can go back through and learn how to dry them or make tinctures. It's just to make it easy for you to find those sections without having to remember which herb lesson I filmed them in. So there's different bits and pieces there. There's a video, there's photos of these nice racks you can get for drying them, and then I've got all the enormous amount of webinars, which I need to go back in and, oh, thanks, Jerry, I just saw your comment, thanks. Yeah, I did most of it in 2015, actually, but I do add bits and pieces to it every year, and coming on to the webinars, I need to go back in and rearrange it a bit again, because the more of those there are, the more I sometimes go in and think, oh, it looks like a jumble sale, I'll need to reorganize it again. But I don't have the webinar recordings from 2015 because they're on old systems and they've gone. But I've got them all going back to 2016. And that year, actually, I did some webinars with special guests on specific topics. So do go in and watch those if you join the course, because they're so interesting. So Lottie Muir runs a cocktail bar in London. It's in a rooftop garden which she cultivates. She's an organic gardener and a forager, and so she makes these elaborate alcoholic and non-alcoholic cocktails, and they're a combination of the cultivated plants that she grows there and plants that she forages around London. So even if you're not into alcohol, that webinar is about a lot more than alcohol. We spoke a lot about the importance of having these wild spaces in cities for people, and how when people come to this cocktail bar on a Friday night, for some people in the city in London, that's their only connection to plants, you know. So it's really, really interesting. And one of my students from Canada came over on holiday and went to her night and loved it and sent me the menu. But Lottie's also written 2 books on cocktails, non-alcoholic and sugar-free. I think they're done with fruit rather than sugar, and alcoholic ones. And they've certainly, the alcohol one won an award with Fortnum and Mason. So look out for her books; they're brilliant. The quality in the video on the old webinars isn't as good because the software wasn't as good back then. It would make you appreciate Zoom, going back and watching those, but the information's really interesting. Mina did a wonderful one. She's now got she's a brilliant forager in Leeds, but she's actually got now a bakery which is gluten-free and foraged food, and it's just going, in fact, bakery, I must go in and edit that, sorry, bakery it should say, not bakery. She's just wonderful. She's so creative, and I think she made icing from sorrel. That was one of the things we did on this. It was just so interesting. She does a lot of fermenting, actually, which is something that, for all I love ferments, I've just never got around to doing that with herbs and with herbal drinks. That's something I keep meaning to get a special guest on to do for the course, actually. And Craig is in Leeds as well, and this was specifically about brewing alcohol. That was brilliant, but again, it was about a lot more than that. It was about being in tune with nature and you know, if you don't have issues with alcohol, I do recommend that you listen to that, because we spoke about a lot more than that. Craig's wonderful. Leeds is well served for wonderful, wonderful foraging teachers. It really is. That is a very fortunate city. Then we just get into the regular ones I do for the students. So what I do is I put a little summary of what we talked about in the webinar, with links to what we talked about with the video recording. So there's the one from the beginning of the course this year, which was the 1st of April. So as you can see, the video quality is clearer, and the one from a couple of weeks ago, and we've got our next one due on Wednesday, actually. Wednesday evening's the next one. And then down at the bottom, recommended resources, so recommended books. So herbal medicine and wild food and local herbs, they're 3 enormous topics, and different aspects of it will interest you at different times of your life. So you might be more interested in the medicine, you might be more interested in the food, you might be interested in cultivating medicinal herbs, you might be more interested in brewing alcohol, you might be more interested in, I don't cover alcohol brewing or jam actually really in my course, because I don't have a sweet tooth, so I don't make jam, and I used to brew years ago, but I'm very out of practice at it, so I don't consider myself that I know enough about that anymore to teach it. There'd be much better people, so be referring you to other people to go and learn with. I'm in the Association of Foragers, which has got members, teachers and foraging suppliers around the world, and in normal circumstances I'd be recommending that you go on walks with other people from there, because everybody's got different specialities, and wherever you live you'll probably have a teacher near you now. So it's a great place to go and look if you're looking for somebody to go out on walks with, when you can go more than 2 kilometers and be closer to each other. So next year probably for that stuff, I think. Recommended suppliers of bottles and jars and different bits and pieces, dried herbs you might want to buy if you're making things. I've got a wee guide to foraging in the city as well, and other bits and pieces there. That's about it really. There's 12 to 15 herbs in each seasonal course, I think, so, and various different bits and pieces behind me here that we make. So infused oils, ointments, oxymels, honeys, syrups, tinctures, decoctions, poultices, compresses. So I cover all the usual herbal medicine extracts, and then basic wild foods things, so wild salads, pestos, chutney, cooked roots. Some of the cooked roots are edible. Infused honeys and vinegars. Infused honeys and vinegars are kind of crossover things anyway. Sometimes they're used as medicines and sometimes they're used as foods. So there we go. You can do a ginger beer ferment and then do a second ferment with the herbs. Yeah, you can. You can do kombucha with herbs as well instead of with green tea. It's like the kefir and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's a lovely thing to do. Do I upload these webinars onto the course? The free ones, Mary, is that the ones you mean? I think I'm going to add them in actually, because as I said, I do these free beginners ones every year, but not usually to this extent. So they've just, I didn't have a plan for this. You know, in fact, I actually held off a week with everything that's happened in the world. My course was all scheduled and due to start. And then the pandemic broke out, and I actually held off for a week from doing anything with my course, because I didn't want anyone to think I was taking advantage of people being stuck at home, and I had to give myself a firm talking to. And I said, well, you do this every year, this course starts at this time every year, but I didn't want people to think I was taking advantage. So anyway, I've ended up running goodness knows how many of these courses, free classes, so I am going to add them into the course, I think, because they have turned into this bit where we're talking about the herbs in more detail. And although the information is in the course and it's there, I think this sort of informal chat style helps people remember things, or they might just pick up on other bits and pieces that they'd forgotten. So yeah, my homework for I think it's Thursday and Friday this week is I'm going to go in and just rearrange that webinar section again in the video course and add these in. Yeah. I'll be built. You lot are all, the irony is, you lot are all like making vinegar and pesto and stuff, and I'm I just did my first weekend off since February. I'm working flat out, and I'm at my desk a lot of the time rearranging things and adding more stuff and all the rest of it. So I'm actually indoors at my desk doing this while everybody else is outside foraging. It's very funny. Anyway, so you don't need to, oh yeah, the final thing I was to show you was where the course was. Hang on a minute. Time to take a break. I took the weekend off, Vicky, and I slobbed about and got a tan. Don't worry. Okay, so I'm just going to close that down and log out. You can get it to save your details as well, so you don't need to log in and out of it. But so the video course, I'll send round where it is with the email as well with the recording from this. So back on the homepage of my website, if you go to the Learn menu, the schedule's not really happening this year. Everything was so neatly scheduled. I was supposed to be going to London, I think it's today actually, to go and teach over there. Anyways, here I am on Zoom. Where are we? Right, online courses. That's what we're clicking, online courses. And then the first one is free introductory and formal classes. That's what we are doing. That's what you're doing just now. The next one is my video course, Learn with the Seasons, Forage for Edible and Medicinal Wild Herbs, or something like that. I change the name all the time, but that's what it is. A practical guide to using local wild herbs as herbal medicines and nutritious wild foods. There we go, that's what it's called. And so on this page is full details about what's in the course each season. So in fact, these photos are mostly from the summer one. So there's honeysuckle, calendula, St. John's wort, daisies in the spring one, silverweeds in the spring one. There's the meadow sweet. There's hazelnut and sorrel, hawthorn. Anyway, enrollment options. So you can buy it once and keep it forever. Now that's the course content. So that's the documents. The videos and photos you can't download. They're hosted on I'm hosting those, but it's the access to them you keep. But obviously the documents you can download and print off, or you can set up a monthly subscription. So as I said, I've made everything half price to try and help everyone, to help me as well, because reverse it 5 weeks ago and I didn't know how I was going to keep the lights on either. So it helps me a huge amount that you're all here, you know. There we are. So you can click either of those options. The checkout screen, all the details about the course are further down that page. Sorry, if you want more details, just scroll down it. The checkout page is here. You just fill in your name. You don't need a coupon code because I've changed the price on the actual website. Just when you check out, it says check out via PayPal. You do not need a PayPal account to do that. It's just a secure way of processing a credit or debit card. If you take the monthly subscription option though, it will prompt you to save your details and set up an account with PayPal. That's so that it can charge you again every month. But it's a really secure system for taking debit and credit cards. So I do recommend, if you don't have it, it's really useful, because online fraud is just becoming more and more of a problem. So it's a secure method for doing that. But if you're buying it once, there's no need, it won't be saving your details, so you don't need a PayPal account for that. You just click the option to pay by credit or debit card rather than PayPal, that's all. So don't worry about that. I answer loads of emails about that every week as well. Oh, you're amazing. Thanks for making your knowledge so accessible. You're welcome. Well, I truly, deeply believe that it's everybody's birthright to be able to recognise a few local herbs and use them for the everyday ailments that we encounter. Coughs and colds and bumps and bruises, just minor things. I'm not teaching you to go and treat anything complicated or dangerous, and also to use them as nutritious wild foods, because to me it's criminal that our wild food grows here and falls to the ground and drops. Meanwhile, we import, why do we import apples from New Zealand? I just think that is criminal. When we've got wild apples here, you know, and that's before you get on to what we can cultivate here. It just doesn't make any sense, and this was common knowledge to our ancestors. And when you get basic safety stuff, you know, you'll be able to do it again as well. If you plopped our ancestors here today, they'd be terrified of electricity and would, you know, come to an injury if we didn't teach them how to use it. But we teach them how to use it. Nobody electrocutes themselves when they flick on the light switch, you know. So we're just talking about doing the same thing, but doing them with plants. So and yeah, it's my absolute joy and pleasure to teach you, because people didn't used to be interested, and we need more of this. That, you know, when you realize that it's not just appreciating nature. I think you go from it being an ornament to realizing it's beneficial for you being in it, and being in it more to you. It's when the penny drops that you're part of it. It's not an ornament, it's not something to observe, that you're an integral part of it. And you can either make choices in your life that harm nature and harm the environment, or that enhance them. And you can choose to enhance them whether you're in the country or you're on your apartment block. If you're in your apartment block just now, you can plant things and grow them on your window ledge, and you've got then, you know, landing pads for bees and birds, and so you instantly make this city more inhabitable for wildlife. And wildlife is coming back everywhere just now. I have never heard the bird song as loud as where I live just now, and it's because there's less traffic on the road. I'm quite near the road where I am, and there's less traffic, so the bird song is louder. I'm noticing more wildlife when I just go into the local village, to the local shop, and it's the same in cities. You know, they can see the Himalayas from Delhi now because the pollution's clearing. So you can be an active part in this, and I actually love city life. I love the stimulation of it. I love being able to go to things, and people keep us up. You know, people are interesting and they're stimulating, and it's great to cross cultures. And I actually love city life. I just never last long in it because I get sick living there. I got sick. That was why I left Edinburgh, Jerry. We knew each other years ago in Edinburgh. 20 years ago, I kept getting coughs, and I remember just getting irritated. And Edinburgh's really clean and next to the sea, but I just started in loads of parks. I used to go walking around the park and Arthur's Seat and stuff, and I just started getting these lung things. And every time I've lived in cities, I've got that. And eczema. I got terrible eczema from the water supply because there were so many chemicals in it. It was really heavily chlorinated. So I dream of clean cities, and we can have them. You know, this isn't the first time in history where we've had densely populated cities. It's happened loads of times before, and we can have nature through them, and we can live really healthy, vibrant lives. And I actively want to create this, and and it's joyful for me that there's so much interest now, because there wasn't before, and I'll do whatever I can think of to help you learn and tune into it, because you're improving the environment for everyone. We're not going to destroy what's there. We're not going to take too much, because nature is designed to be abundant and to procreate effortlessly and adapt effortlessly. It doesn't matter what changes are going on in the climate. Plants are going to find a way to keep growing, and we need to work with them in more harmony and follow them, because that's what's going to help us adapt and not just survive, adapt and live with whatever our new environment is, because it's definitely changing, you know. But I will do whatever I can to help people learn this, because it's important for our physical health, our emotional health, our mental well-being, but for everything. And when we realize that we actually literally are wildlife, that's when it changes. I think we're just all in it together, and we can make it worse, or we can make it better. It's not just that we don't harm it, we can actually enhance it when we start to learn more about it, and that helps everyone and everything. See, this is why I usually cry at the end. Right, oh my goodness, so much. I sat down today, I thought I'll make sure it's only an hour today. It's now longer than ever. So it's 1:15, girls and boys. So I'm going to scoot back up and see your final questions and comments, but I'll send the video around. If you need to go, then go. Thank you ever so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It just makes my heart sing that there's so much interest now. It really does. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Well, your enthusiasm is inspiring. Well, thank you. It's lovely to have you here today. It's really the people who are getting back in touch. It's just lovely. It's just lovely. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much. You're very welcome, Lorraine. Vicky's crying too. Started to grow my own veg. Great. Go for it. Thank you. I need to learn more about all the foods hanging out in the garden, not being used. The more apocalypse ready, the better. Yeah, well, actually, I have to say, obviously, I had to cancel my events and things in person, but bar that, my life really hasn't changed very much. Other than I'm busier than ever. You know, I've just never had such demand for my online stuff. So great that it's there and it can be used to help people. You are all very, very welcome. Me too. Blackbirds and robins are very visible, aren't they? Just the bird song is so much louder. Well said. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you so, so much. I just find you so wonderfully enthusiastic, positive and inspiring. These intro courses have been brilliant and I cannot wait to sign up. Oh, thanks. I'm working as a healthcare assistant. Yeah, there's a lot of people in healthcare just now, and yeah, anyway, I'll get upset. I cannot imagine a better way to de-stress than spending a couple of hours gathering and making teas and tinctures. Well, that's what I'm hearing from people in that line of work who are doing this. Yeah, thank you. I have already made my first Cleaver's tea after Friday's class. Well, you're very welcome. I think it's just getting late, isn't it? I'm really sorry if I have missed. These are just lovely. There's lovely things here. Thanks, Pauline. It's such a positive break, and thanks. If I missed your questions, I'm sorry. Do you want to hop into the next one and we'll pick it up next time? Thank you. Being a follower and advocate since I did your course on Seed Savers years ago. Oh, my first course on Seed Savers. I taught at Seed Savers for 15 years. And my first course was May 2004. And we made that thyme cough syrup that Pauline was talking about, and we made a rose cream and comfrey poultice, I think. Yeah, I can still remember some of the people who were there. Thanks ever so much. There's been a little side conversation going on between people about books and fermenting recipes and all sorts of bits and pieces. I really appreciate you hopping in and helping with those, because I couldn't keep up with it today. That's never happened before, so yeah. All right, well, listen, thanks everybody for your time. I really appreciate it. And the video should be ready. It'll be between 4 and 5, you'll get the recording. And thanks for joining me. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you again soon. Cheerio.